Today we're learning Halacha Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah Hamaske Bayis L'Chaveroi. This has to do with someone who's renting a house to his friend. The question is who is obligated to search Riboidik. So first of all, who's the chayva, and is the transfer of the key enough to consider it that the renter has to check it, or a renter that he didn't use the house with chometz, the maskir who rents it as if it's that he was checked and somebody finds chometz, and when does a person want to pay money to have his house checked? So we started off the Rambam Yudches. Hamaskir bayis l'chaveroi. If he didn't give him yet the key, the owner did not give the key yet to the renter. Chalabos, and the 14th night has come along. The obligation is on the owner who's renting it out to do so. If he gave Amafteach the key, Chalabos, then only then did the night of the 14th come. The Seicher, the renter, has to check it. So the Magen Mishnah cites a brayso, Mosdos 4a. And then he emphasized that the Seicher does not acquire the rental of the house by giving over the key. Because when you rent land or a house, you have the Hilchos Mechira in Perek Aleph Halacha Yudches. It says that just like karka is only acquired by transfer of money or a star, or by doing something to show your ownership, so too rental of land is only done in the same fashion, either with money or by contract or by doing things in the land to show your ownership. And neither after that point neither can recant on their obligations. Now the Rambam adds that Mesiras Mafteach, giving over the key, does not acquire. If someone sells a house and he gives the other person the key, it's as if he tells him, go ahead and do what you have to do. And when he does it, that's when he acquires it. So the actual transference of the key is not a kinyan. We must therefore say that here the one who's renting it already did something, either with money or with a star, or he showed his ownership. When when he has the key, then the one who is the owner has to check it, because without the key, the renter can't get into it. Rashi on the brayso explains that giving over the key acquires, and therefore it depends on the transference of the key. Tosfos asks a question from Overkamer. Sfirus Karka is only with Keser Shtar V'Chazok, as we mentioned earlier, and Mesiras Mafteach doesn't work. It's only as if he tells him, go ahead and do that which you have to do. And furthermore, how can he get into the house if he doesn't have a key? And it would seem that even if the Seicher acquired the house by doing something which would make it his, but when the key is in the hands of the owner, then the renter still has to check it because he already acquired it. And it would seem from Tosfos that the key obligates the Seicher to check even before he did a kinyan. So the Ran explains that we're talking here where the Seicher did a kinyan, the renter did a kinyan, but as long as the key is in the hands of the owner, then the owner has to check it, because the renter cannot get in there. He doesn't have the key, and he has no chiyuv to yiboidik, even though he gave money to rent it. But the Kesef Mishnah says that Tosfos really means that it is the renter's obligation, just that he can't get in there. Now Tosfos says only a person that wants to acquire a house has to have the key to make the b'dika. But a different person who has the keys of his friend's house, the fact that he has the keys of his friend's house does not obligate him to check the house, and that's his friend's house, and that is the opinion also of Rae Gann Family. We go to the next page. A renter who did not use chametz in the house. Rae Gann Family adds, if the renter did not bring any chametz, he doesn't have to nullify because the chametz in the house is not his, and therefore the owner has to be mevatel. Or the seicher also has to be mevatel since it's in his house and he might come to eat it. So he has to be mechuyev. Therefore, he's mechuyev because he might come to eat it, and therefore he has to be boidik and he has to be mevatel. And furthermore, everyone who rents a house, definitely he gives over whatever's in the house, including chametz, to the renter. And therefore the chametz would become the renters. The maskir, the owner, it will not be over on bal yiroi bal yimotze, and therefore the renter has to make the checking and be boidik and be mevatel. Halacha l8a. The halacha l8a is as follows. Shulchan says that the renter of a house on the 13th of Nisan for the 14th and on is, and it'll be the house of the renter, and he did it by renting the land. If he did not receive the key until the 14th, the night of the 14th came in, the owner has to check it. And if once it was given over the mafteach, the 14th came along, the seicher has to be boidik. So the Mishnah Berurah says that he said it according to the understanding of the Ran and the Maggid Mishnah, that the renter is obligated to check only when he rented it before the 14th, and he also got the key before the 14th. The Chog Yaakov and other Achronim are of the opinion that one should be stringent, like Tosis and the Ran, that giving over the key alone obligates. Therefore, if the key was given to the renter before the 14th, he's obligated to be boidik because the owner can't go in to check it. He has no key, even if all the other obligations have not been fulfilled yet. The Pri Chodesh writes that the main opinion is according to the first thought, that only the seicher has to be boidik, even if he didn't do a kinyan, because the house keys are in his hands. Still, even though the chiyuv of bedika is on both of them, on the seicher and the maskir, still one has to be a shliach, and the other one will yoytze him whatever has to be done. Now, if you rent a house and you thought for sure it was checked, you came and you rented it for Pesach, and you rented it before the 14th. If you rented it, the chesed says it's checked, and it's found that it's not checked, the seicher has to check it, and it's not a mekach toros. You can't say, I don't want it, I made a mistake, I wanted a house that's checked. Even if this costs money to check, in other words, the people who do this, you have to call a cleaning person, because he's doing a mitzvah, and we'll continue on the next page. The Maggid Mishnah cites Psochim 4b. There the Gemara's questions somebody rents a house to his friend, and it supposedly was checked, and found that it's not checked. Is it called a mekach toros? Is a mistaken deal? So the Gemara says, not only where you don't pay for people to help you clean it, it's certainly not a mekach toros, because he wants to do a mitzvah by himself with his physical body. But even where you pay others to do it, a person wants to be mekayem a mitzvah, even with his body or with his money. The Maggid Mishnah cites that the Ra'ah wrote in the name of the Rambam that the renter, the owner, has to pay afterwards to the renter whatever cost him, because he said the house is checked, and now the seicher had to lay out money, and he explains that the Gemara understood that he has to give back the money. And the question was only whether it's a mekach toros, whether it was a mistaken deal that the renter can pull out of the deal. And the Gemara says from Divrei Abaye, it's not called a mekach toros because the person wants to do mitzvahs, whether it's with its physical exertion or with its monetary, even though he'll get the money back. But if the owner would not have to give him back the money, we would not say a person wants to do a mitzvah with his money if he's going to cost him and lose the money. Rabbeinu Manoach explains that even though the renter made a condition that the house is boduk, he cannot recant from his obligations because he's doing a mitzvah. That's the way he understands it. He brings the Gemara, and even though that we see he can get his money back, and he wants to nullify the shiurs because the Seicher wants to make sure that the house was checked and it wasn't. We don't listen to him. We say that since most people want to do mitzvahs, we do not say you are different and therefore the deal is nullified. It's not nullified. He has to clean the house. Rabbi Manoach goes further. He says this is not a din, but the Rachamim wanted to punish or to tax the renter so that people will not say, I don't want to do a mitzvah. I'm going away not to be able to have to do a mitzvah. Because the person who wants to recant from the rental because of the work of a mitzvah is showing his lack of attachment to the mitzvah, even in a place where he's going to have to lay out money for a while till it's paid back for him. So Rabbeinu Manoach has a question. Halacha Gimel, we learned that if there was bread in the mouth of a nachash, he does not have to rent a snake exterminator, even a goyish who want to take it out, because it costs money. So why is that any different from here? And he answers that the payment to snake exterminator is a lot of money. Therefore, they didn't require it. Here we're talking about someone to check the house, and that's not much money, and therefore a person will lay it out. Furthermore, he explains that by a snake exterminator, they didn't obligate him because he already did the mitzvah, and therefore what should he do if a snake came in after he checked it? But here it's talking when the house was never checked, and we want to make sure that it should be checked. Therefore, the Chachamim required him to expend his money, whether it's temporary or permanent. We go to the next page. The second answer depends how we learn the law regarding a snake. It doesn't mean he went into a house that was checked already, like the Ravid, or like the Rambam, that even though the Nochash went into it before he was boidik, they did not require him to take it out, because that's the language of the Rambam. Further, Rabbeinu Manoach says, since when the bread is in the mouth of the snake, he cannot do it himself, therefore they didn't require him to do it with his money. But when he can do it himself, then we say to him, okay, you don't want to do it yourself, pay money, but you could do it yourself. According to the Ra'ah, in the name of the Ramban, that here the maskir is going to have to pay back the money, then the question doesn't begin, because by a snake exterminator you pay it, and he's not going to give back any money. Whereas here, we're talking about at the end we'll get the money back, and therefore there's no monetary loss. Now goes Maimonides asks a question on what it says. It's a mitzvah. He's doing a mitzvah. Why does the Gemara say this the exact opposite of what it says about mitzvah? We find in Bava Metzia that the people at times do not want to spend money for mitzvahs, and there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with it. In Bava Metzia Chof Tesam and Beis. So Taisus explained that there it's talking that you cannot assume you use somebody else's money without his knowledge. But when he knows that he's going to live there and he wants to have a house free of chametz for Pesach, for sure he wants to do the mitzvah. And he brings from Tshuva Shar Ephraim, the Hagoyes Maimonides does, that the Ran disagrees on the Ra'ah, in the name of the Ramban, and he's of the opinion that the maskir the owner does not have to pay back the money, because a person wants to do mitzvah money means even to expend it without return. And that's why Rabbeinu Manoach has a question, why should he spend money here, and by a snake exterminated, we say he doesn't have to, and he explains that one is very expensive, one is not so expensive. The Shulchan Aruch paskins that if you rent a house to your friend on the understanding that it is checked and then it's found that it's not bodik, the seicha has to be bodik. It's not a mekach tois. It's not a mistake, and mistaken deal. And even in a place where you have to pay because the mitzvah is doing a mitzvah, just like the Loshen the Rambam. There are more ads. There are those who say that the owner has to return the money that he expended for the checking, since he said he conditioned the rental on the fact that it was rented, just like the Magen Mishnah says. And we find also in Hilchos Tzitzis, and the Mishnah Berurah brings down that the Achronim say, in every instance, the mask is not obligated to pay the money, because he says, I thought, like the Ran, that you do not have to return it, and therefore, since it's a questionable halacha, is we would have to prove who's correct, and we can't prove that until Mashiach comes. In Mi'ez Hashem, we'll learn the halacha Yutes in the next shiur.